Hi, everybody. How are you all doing today? Let's talk about Mercury going retrograde from November 26th. Sorry, there are kids playing outside. Sort of this room faces the front door. Anyway, they're new neighbors moved in next door and they have a child, which is sweet. I mean, I have a cat. They're both noisy, the child and the cat. So, we put up with it. And they're nice people. But the child has a friend who was visiting today. And of course, they're playing outside the apartment, as children should do. It's good for them. But of course, I'm repulsed. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Please, no one take it seriously. It's like you may not, you all don't know me well enough to know my sense of humor. Anyway, or maybe some of you have started to catch on. But yeah, they're very sweet, and they're sort of play acting, they're role playing adulthood. I just heard someone say, you focus on doing your chores, and if it looks like somebody's not doing what they should be doing, I was just like, oh, wonder what their parents are like, what their families are like, and what's going on with the chores there. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. I did the November overview yesterday, and I mentioned that the first 3 weeks of November are forward movement, and then Mercury goes retrograde November 26th to December 15th. And also, the reason why I'm doing this video today is that tomorrow, November the 6th, Mercury enters his shadow degrees. Now, entering the shadow degrees is given it depends, it's given a certain amount of importance. I just think what's important with the shadow degrees, it's not the most important thing for me with regard to Mercury retrograde. But essentially, what are shadow degrees? Oh, great, and a siren. All of a sudden, Glendale seems to be the hotbed of exciting activity, when I start to tape my videos. And for the rest of the time, it really doesn't feel like it is. Or as you know, I'm just so much more sensitive to outside sounds, and I could soundproof and do all sorts of things, but, life is short. A planet really doesn't go retrograde. All the planets are revolving around the sun and moving in a forward direction. It just so happens that on the rotation, sometimes with the Earth, from the Earth's vantage point, Mercury is still moving forward. But from our vantage point, it looks like, because of the way the orbit is turning, it looks like Mercury is actually going backwards. It's not actually, but to us, it looks like it's going backwards. So that is Mercury being retrograde. And while Mercury is retrograde, from our perspective, it goes over a certain portion of our chart 3 times. It's direct, then it goes retrograde or appears retrograde, and then it goes direct again. So a certain part of the chart, every time Mercury goes retrograde, every 3 months, Mercury goes over 3 times. And this time Mercury is going to do that between 6 degrees Sagittarius and 23 degrees Sagittarius. And so Mercury tomorrow enters 6 degrees of Sagittarius and enters his shadow degrees. He enters the degrees that he's going to start to go over 3 times. Not the most important thing as far as Mercury is concerned. The thing to kind of keep an eye out for is what comes up starting tomorrow all the way to January the 2nd, when Mercury leaves his shadow degrees. That plays out or comes up for reconsideration. Are there conversations, meetings, mercurial items? Are there things that are rethought? And this idea of rethinking is going to come up again and again now, between now and the middle to the end of April. Rethinking, refocusing our goals and our actions and our conflict with Mars going retrograde, what we value, and is everything in alignment with what we value when Venus goes retrograde, and of course Mercury goes retrograde in March and early April again. So Mercury enters its shadow degrees tomorrow, the degrees between 6 degrees Sag and 23 degrees Sag that he's going to go over 3 times. And the thing to start to pay attention to, just gently, or make a note of, with Mercury having entered Sagittarius a few days ago, what is this going to bring up for discussion? Or is Mercury, between now and January 2nd, are there certain things that get revisited? Do you have a certain set of conversations between November the 7th and November the 26th that then go through a kind of a reality check between November 26th and December 15th, and then reach some sort of a resolution December 15th to January 2nd. So Mercury direct right now between, till November 26th, retrograde November 26th to December 15th, direct again, and then moves past 23 degrees Sag on January the 2nd, and goes out of Sag on January the 8th, I think. Yep, on January the 8th. So what is more important and relevant with Mercury retrograde? First and foremost, I'm going to stand by what I said yesterday, which is it's still forward movement. Mercury is still moving forward relatively quickly. He's going to start to slow down. But the Mercury retrograde, for the first 3 weeks of November, we are encouraged to stay in action, particularly those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth charts. Now, as I have mentioned this numerous times, but is worth repeating, when Mercury goes retrograde, those of us who have Mercury retrograde in our birth charts, don't deliberate as much and become decisive. And those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth charts get critical reality checks about timelines and what is actually going on related to certain projects, or what I like to call certain baskets that we've been putting our eggs in. And we, based on conversations and based on what we think and based on what we're seeing, may be thinking that things will move forward in a certain way. But then Mercury goes retrograde and says, let me just tell you what's actually going on. Let me tell you what is real about this. And our butt has a tendency to hit the ground, and we are encouraged to look at the thing that I was looking to inhabit. Does it have pillars built on pillars of sand? Or I've been putting all my eggs in this basket. Is that worth the investment, or do I need to move those eggs and put it in a different basket? Most importantly, while Mercury is retrograde, there's a going back over plans and going back to the drawing board again. That doesn't mean that the direction that you're trying to move in needs to be abandoned. It just means that there's a start and stop, and an element of, is this really the right way? Is this really the right next step? Is this really the project to invest in? Is this really the thing? Have you gotten out of what you're moving forward, what you need out of it? And do you need to start looking in different directions, start to move forward from an experience that may or may not turn out to be exactly what you thought it would be? So yeah, Mercury does enter its shadow degrees, but to me, the more important thing is what is actually going to come through while Mercury is retrograde. For those of you who have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, how are you going to become a little bit more, how are you going to become more decisive and clearer about the things that you've been deliberating on for the past 3 months at that point in time, and then enact and roll out those decisions over the next 3 months. And those of us who have Mercury direct, we continue to move forward over the next 3 weeks, and then when Mercury is getting ready to go retrograde until December the 15th, we get our sense of what is really, what do I need to know that I don't know? And it's not a question of people BSing us necessarily always, or being deceptive. Sometimes we're interacting with people who are themselves convinced of what they're talking about. And sometimes we will interact with people who aren't entirely aware that they are not being completely transparent or honest as well. Sometimes people do BS. And a Mercury retrograde is great transit to get clear on where the BS is and what the BS is, but also where it is that we've allowed, understandably, elements of fantasy to seep into how we're expecting things to roll out, either with regard to timeline or what is going to happen next or how it's going to happen. One of the big things that comes up with Mercury retrograde, and this is something I told you I would talk about today in yesterday's video about November, is part of recurring lessons that I've been having with past few Mercury retrogrades. And I have to believe that part of the reason why I've been observing this and been learning these lessons myself is because there's something to transform onto you. Is that the idea is that if something comes through while Mercury is retrograde, It's not a time to make commitments. It's not a time to sign contracts. It's not a time to sign on the dotted line. It's a time to go back to the drawing board. The thing that I have experienced with Mercury retrograde is that when Mercury does go direct after being retrograde, certain facts that were presented to us while Mercury is retrograde change. And they don't change because someone is necessarily being deceptive. They might change because someone thought it would take 3 days to do this. And as Mercury was going direct, they realized it would take 1 day to do this. So if you were expecting to get paid for 3 days for something, you'll get paid for 1 day for something. And so then, the feeling is, well, I should never have agreed to this. And this changed and I should know better. And why did I agree to this while Mercury is retrograde? But I think, and this is the lesson, let's say Mercury is retrograde and you have taken certain steps and you realize while Mercury is retrograde that the steps you've taken and what you thought would be the way things would move forward is not the way they're going to turn out. But something else shows up. And if that something else is somehow going to rescue you out of a particular situation that you're now finding things are not as real, then it could be worth it to take the opportunity. The universe might be giving you a solid. And even if certain facts change about it, it may actually still be a helpful thing. Things will clear up. Very often, if you, by this at the same time, it's really up to us to do our due diligence and to examine things that come to us at all times, with regard to what we need, whether it is a blessing, whether it is not a blessing. Things can come up while Mercury is retrograde. This is what I have learned on multiple occasions that can actually be worth taking and be helpful because they are rescuing you out of a situation or giving you another alternative or helping you out of a situation that you only realize the reality of once Mercury was retrograde. So let's say that you've been interviewing for a job and you thought that you were going to get it and everybody loved you. And when Mercury went retrograde, all of a sudden you realized, oh my God, I don't think I'm going to get it. They've had an internal candidate all along and they've just been talking this up and blah, 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 Or let's say that with that job, you realized that something about it is not entirely accurate. And your butt hits the ground. And you're like, I've been investing all my eggs in this basket and I've done all this kind of stuff. And I thought I would have an offer and I thought I would start by January the 1st. And it's not looking like this is what it is. Or, I participated in this project and I was told that this would have legs. And I'm realizing that not everybody was on the same page who's, part of the leadership team or that kind of stuff. And something could come up during that time period that might say, the universe might say, here's this. And you might think, well, Mercury is retrograde, so I'm just not, no. I'm going to learn something and something about this is going to shift afterwards. But if here's this, be careful of becoming 4 of Cupsy with Mercury retrograde. Let me see if I can find the 4 of Cups card. Be careful of becoming 4 of Cupsy with Mercury retrograde, where the universe is offering you something and you talk yourself out of it or you don't avail of it. I have actually availed of something while Mercury is retrograde out of a situation that surprised me and that I realized was not what it was advertised. It actually helped me get out of it. I realized after Mercury went direct that the facts regarding it were not clean and clear. And I got really frustrated and angry about it, understandably, because it was kind of a financial thing. It was like, I agreed to this because I thought this was what was going to be hitting my bank account. And now what I'm learning is it's not. But the interesting thing is, I realized that whatever those adjustments were, it wasn't as if it was something illegal. It's just, as I said to you, while Mercury was retrograde, people were thinking one thing, and as it was moving direct, it became something else. And while in the short term, it did not offer the financial benefit, as time went on and Mercury gathered speed, It actually did. So availing of the opportunity was not a negative thing or a bad thing. If an opportunity comes up while Mercury is retrograde and you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, think, is this actually giving me something that I need? Were the people in the room nice? Am I going to benefit? You may learn things about the project that after Mercury goes direct that may disappoint you, but that doesn't mean that it isn't something worth investing time and energy in. Where it can become problematic, understandably, is, you've been offered a job and your understanding is that you're going to be reporting to a VP, and then just as Mercury is going direct, you're being told that you're going to be reporting to someone who you never thought you'd be reporting to, something changes in such a way, and you've already been making plans that makes you feel like there's something so profoundly wrong about this that I'm not going to take it. And that also might be okay. I have done both things. I've availed of something while Mercury is retrograde, been profoundly frustrated with it as Mercury went direct, only to be rewarded that I took it because it actually helped me out. I've also done something where something came through while Mercury was retrograde. I was fixated or thinking that an outcome would go in a certain direction. And something else came through that would interfere with the timeline of that outcome, and I rejected it, only to learn a few days later that the outcome I was banking on was not going to happen. And the universe had done me what I call a Mercury retrograde solid. Abhi, you're assuming that things are going to roll out at this timeline and you'll be ready to do this, that, or the other. Things are going to move this way and things are going to be this and be that. Here's something else. And here's the thing. There were things that it was offering that were good for me. Everything really felt right about it. It almost answered a need or fulfilled a need. And there were provisions, or I had the ability, if that other thing came through, that I could then say, I'm so sorry, without being too far along something. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to go take that if it came through. Or I need to make an adjustment. You can't always assume. It's one of these things, sort of the bird in hand as opposed to two in the bush kind of philosophy. So if Mercury retrograde is bringing you a bird in hand, examine it. Examine it. Because the things that are getting readjusted for those of us who are Mercury direct in our birth charts are things that we've been working on for the past while Mercury has been direct. The fact that something is offered or comes through as something to agree to while Mercury is retrograde, the chances that specifics about it will change after Mercury goes direct are real. But if you're closing something out because you think something is a sure thing and you are not, and you don't know that it's a sure thing or not, it's a tricky proposition. You've got to gauge this for yourself based on what comes up. The important thing with Mercury retrograde, for people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart, and I'm saying this again, is that you are more decisive about what it is that you want. Mercury retrograde in their birth chart people are typically people who process a lot, ruminate a lot, fret maybe even. The classic people, when I'm doing a reading and the reading has a time limit on it, the vast majority of people who go over have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts. And they'll kind of acknowledge it, but it's the way that they're processing. My friends who have Mercury retrograde it's just like, oh my God, I was done with this 10 minutes ago. Why are we still talking about it? People who have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart can sometimes be the classic people who don't quite show up on time, who have their own sense of time. But then when Mercury goes retrograde, it's like, bam, 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 bam. I'm going to do this, 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 I'm going to do this. And the next 3 months are about them. And for people who have Mercury direct in their birth chart, Mercury retrograde may bring you a reality check or reality checks related to assumptions you were making while Mercury is forward for the past 3 months ago, and may sometimes deliver something to you, that can be a worthy alternative, something that is a lifeline for you, that you need to examine carefully. And you really need to look at it with care. What are you gaining? What are the risks? The scenario I gave you where an offer is made and you are given certain facts, and as Mercury is going direct, the offer is changed on you in a way that feels like a detriment. Like, I would never have said yes to this if these facts were given to me first. And sometimes it's the universe playing a bit of a joke, saying, you know what, I'm going to present this to you this way so you take it because it's going to help you. And then I'll give you the reality check later. And as Mercury gathers speed, you'll get the reward for it. That's the most important thing that I want to convey. We know with Mercury retrograde and direct, and you know with Mercury retrograde and direct. I'm going to turn this light on. It's not my usual light, but the sun is getting ready to set in a few minutes, so I just want there to be a different light. You guys, why am I 7 pounds heavier than where I should be? What is going on? I mean, it doesn't help that, I'm eating instant noodles right before going to bed last night, or 3 nights before I was just like flatbreads with salted butter and sugar, 4 of them. I know the answer to the question, but I've been for a while at least 5 pounds over where I want to be, and right now I'm 7 pounds over where and I can see it in my face. My face looks like a football. And when I put on weight, it goes right here. So anyway, I was looking at the lighting, and so I got distracted, and I answered my own question, so you don't have to answer it. Just things that we think about, right, as human beings. We know the standard things about Mercury retrograde, particularly when Mercury is going retrograde and direct, November 26th, December 15th. But during that time, travel snafus, bags lost, showing up at the airport at the wrong time, issues with buses and Ubers and lifts and all that kind of stuff, issues with technology, feeling like you've left enough time, Zoom won't work, my laptop is dying, blah, blah, blah. We know all that stuff can be expected. I thought I left 2 hours to get to this place, but I'm stuck in a traffic jam that is still going to make me an hour late. That's an exaggeration, but not beyond the realm of possibility when Mercury's retrograde. Some astrologers annoyingly suggest that Mercury's trying to get you to slow down. But it's not a world where we're encouraged to slow down, and Mercury controls a lot of what we're trying to do. I get that to some extent, but it's really not helpful to be told that Mercury is telling you to slow down when you're stuck in traffic on a freeway that all of a sudden is blocked for an inordinately long amount of time. Long time. That's one of those moments where you're just like, how is this helping me? But when Mercury is changing direction, giving you a reality check, that's hugely helpful. I have now started to, based on what I have learned with Mercury retrograde, I have now started to look forward to Mercury retrograde to tell me what I need to know about certain situations. So all those snafus, bizarre phone calls with customer service. I was supposed to get this kind of nail in this package and it's not included, and what are you talking, just this kind of, and then when Mercury goes direct, all of a sudden it's like those issues were not even there. It all gets magically sorted out. All of that applies. And all of that gets a kind of a concentration and a focus around November 26th and December the 15th, which means especially for Thanksgiving, watch the travel logistics. The other thing that happens with Mercury is that During a Mercury retrograde, the retrograde Mercury meets up with the Sun, and he's going to do that on December the 5th. On December the 5th, a Mercury cycle the Mercury cycle of Leo ends and the Mercury cycle of Sagittarius starts up. It starts up a communication transaction cycle in the Sagittarius part of the chart that is going to take us all the way to March 24th, when an Aries communication cycle will begin. There's something about the sign of Sagittarius right now, and I have done a video about the transit through the sign of Sagittarius that you can look at to really ponder this. We are on a journey to get to move towards something that we desire, that we feel the universe is encouraging us to move towards by the end of the first week of June next year. And if you want to know where in your chart you can see this, it's about the North Node eclipses in the Aries part of the chart, the house occupied by Aries in your chart. We are moving in that direction. We may have wanted to move in a certain direction, and March, April, May, June, July, August, September of 23 felt blocked from doing so. Between September, October 23 to March 24, something could have blown open the door in early 24. And since September, October, we can feel ourselves on a journey of transformation. November certainly being a month of transformation and change. We may not be entirely clear about what that outcome is. It may not be here. We may not even be convinced that we're going to get there, but we're still needing to release something in the Libra part of the chart and move towards something in the Aries part of the chart. But that journey is not a simple journey. There are three other parts of the chart that are in conversation with all of this. The Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius and the communication cycle in Sagittarius is one of them. Mars being direct and retrograde and direct within Cancer and Leo is another part of it. Mercury and Venus retrograde again in March and April of 2025 between Pisces and Aries is another part of it. There's a closing out certain things and stabilizing the future that takes certain steps back and forth. Now, Venus has been in Sagittarius since October 17th to November 11th. And Venus continues to be in Sagittarius for the next 5 days or so. So, as you know, I've said this before, wherever Venus goes, she asks, is everything here, your resources, your relationships, in alignment with what you value? Are they supporting what you value? Or are they creating a leak? And the second thing that Venus does is that she increases and creates harmony, tries to build relationships, tries to provide financial opportunities, job opportunities even, recognition, luck, day-to-day luck. Mercury came into Sagittarius a few days ago on November the 2nd, and he trined the North Node on November the 5th, yesterday. So somewhere with Venus doing her work, Mercury comes in and things move into the mental processing realm and the communication realm, writing, talking, speaking, thinking. What is in alignment? What is not in alignment? What opportunities do I pursue, etc. Then tomorrow, Mercury enters its shadow degrees. Now, the Sun will come into Sagittarius on the 22nd. And on the 30th of November, we will have the new moon in Sagittarius. And December will become a Sagittarius month. But there's activity going on in November that is laying a certain amount of groundwork for a real set of focus and action in December related to the Sagittarius part of the chart. And this Mercury retrograde is a big component of that. And is also a big component, the question, because Mercury trines the North Node just before he goes into his shadow degrees. Once he enters his shadow degrees, he is going to square Saturn, oppose Jupiter, trine Chiron. The sequence the first time around is going to be square Saturn, oppose Jupiter, trine Chiron. Some of that sequence will change once he goes retrograde and direct based on where those planets are going to be. Square Saturn, opposed Jupiter, trine Chiron. As we said in the Sagittarius video, developments in the Sagittarius part of the chart are going to feel like they're under threat from the Pisces part of the chart. As you know, Saturn in Pisces is either asking you to structure creative or spiritual goals related to the Pisces part of the chart that have been nebulous since 2012, or you may have been dealing with some sort of crisis in the Pisces part of the chart involving loss, deception, gaslighting, or you might be the person who is playing your cards too close to the chest for other people, starting 2012, reaching some sort of a crisis in 2016-17 that Saturn is now trying to stabilize and bring visibility to and encourage you to act responsibly and thoughtfully to reach some conclusions and compromises in the Pisces part of the chart. And while Saturn is doing that, there's a feeling that if there's an opportunity or something being built up or brewing in the Sagittarius part of the chart, that it might be, you've got to account for the Sagittarius part of, for the Pisces part of the chart. And there's a curious dependency, there's a threat, there's a dependency in order for you to act responsibly related to stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart. You may feel and you may need to not only communicate, but the new moon in Sagittarius on November the 30th is square Saturn. All of December might contain a certain preoccupation with how can I avail of, how can I bring the Sagittarius part of the chart into alignment with what I value? How can I take advantage of opportunities and harmony and that Venus has provided in such a way that I can harvest them and cultivate them while still taking actions related to the Pisces part of the chart that are responsible, setting the boundaries where I need to set them, treating myself with the utmost of respect in the Pisces part of the chart so that I can get the best possible outcomes, being wise, being strategic, taking karmically aware, intentionally clean actions, but also drawing lines and boundaries where you may have struggled to do so since 2012. So Mercury entering Venus by November 11th leaves Sagittarius to go into Capricorn, and she's already very much asked the question of what needs to be brought into alignment and provided certain opportunities for a certain kind of harmony. She trined the North Node on October the 21st. Mercury trined the North Node on November the 5th. The Sun will trine the North Node on November the 24th. An opportunity may present itself that allows you to reap or develop something in the Sagittarius part of the chart that is important to you and bring it into alignment with what you value. But it may involve you questioning and looking at how developing that needs to take into account acting responsibly in the Pisces part of the chart, and how developing that can help you end and begin an appropriate 12-13 year cycle in the Gemini part of the chart, because Mercury will oppose Jupiter. The nice thing is that Mercury does trine Chiron 3 times. So in the process, Mercury gives you the word that comes to mind is chutzpah, gives you the internal boost to heal yourself through this process. And then once all of this is done and Mercury's direct and Mercury leaves his shadow degrees by January 2nd, on January the 8th, he will square Neptune. So it will all sort of get tested with the Pisces part of the chart again. But I do want to give you that timeline because there's something as we head to November the 30th The November the 30th Sagittarius new moon also has Venus in Capricorn trining Uranus in Taurus. And a week later, Venus will conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So there are other aspects around that time that are, again, it could be that clarity around forward movement may come as November moves forward. There's something about the Sagittarius part of the chart that is playing a role in it, an opportunity, clarity. But the Mercury retrograde is a really important, where am I headed? What am I looking at? What is deliberate? One more thing about Mercury retrogrades. If you were involved in a project while Mercury was retrograde, successive Mercury retrogrades can bring developments related to that project. But in this arc of moving from where we are, releasing what we need to in the Libra part of the chart, releasing what is stagnant and has served its purpose, moving to a more fertile ground of something that we may desire. And it may, the ultimate outcome may not look like what we want. It may be that we realize that it was presented to us in our hearts as a shiny thing, but there are also certain things we've learned about it that we don't like. But the process has made us think about what it is that we are going to design for ourselves. What has that process given us? Stabilizing the new, releasing the old continues till the end of the first week of June next year. And one of the three contributing factors to that journey is this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. What comes up in the Sagittarius part of the chart as an opportunity that requires deliberation? November is a month of Scorpio. We're really focused on getting the Scorpio part of the chart into alignment with the direction we want to go in, and in such a way that we really can use that activity, set of activities that we're taking related to the Scorpio part of the chart to help bring the Pisces part of the chart, to stabilize the Pisces part of our chart. There's a trine between Scorpio and Pisces. By the time the planets move into Sagittarius, that turns into a square. There's a trine from Sagittarius to the North Node in Aries and Chiron in Aries. So it's not, there's all of a sudden the focus is on the future. But Saturn and Neptune and Pisces are like, not so fast. We've still got some cleanup that we're doing here. So if you're going to build something solid with Venus going through Sagittarius, and then Mercury and the Sun, and then the new moon, and if you're going to avail of opportunities, make sure they are on solid ground in such a way that you are protecting yourself and taking the right actions in connection with the Pisces part of your chart. And those actions should then contribute to Jupiter ending a 12-13-year cycle, starting a 12-13-year cycle in the Gemini part of the chart. And the trine to Chiron should help you act from a place of greater empowerment than before through this process. Biggest thing about Mercury retrograde, folks, it's coming up. You'll find yourself hopefully decisive and clear about what you want to do. Mercury direct, folks, just pay attention to what you learn that is going to make you go back to the drawing board with regard to timelines and what you thought had legs and doesn't turn out to. And for anybody who gets an opportunity, examine it carefully to see if it's actually turning out to be a godsend out of a certain situation, with the understanding that things about it may change annoyingly and frustratingly as Mercury is going direct. Or is what is coming up while Mercury is direct giving you the sense that something you have committed to should not be pursued? In the example that I gave you about when I rejected something that I know I should not have, but I did it because even as an astrologer, I got in my head about Mercury retrograde and no, and I shouldn't. And I went into sort of a Mercury retrograde loop. If I actually slowed myself down, calmed myself down, looked at it, and that's the other thing with Mercury retrograde, it can do this thing about our processing. And the way to deal with that is to look at the facts. Here are the pros, here are the cons, a bird in hand. It is actually helping me get out of this situation. Everything about it feels right. And if the bird in the bush comes through, and it's fair and legitimate and right for me to consider taking that, there's a way out. And if the bird in the bush does not come through, and it's part of this reality check that Mercury is giving me, then by taking this opportunity that is right, but details around it might change after the fact, then at least I have something that is helping me and that is going to help me over the next 3 months or so. Houses ruled by Mercury in your chart when Mercury goes retrograde will be affected. Not only the house where Mercury is retrograde, the Sagittarius part of the chart, but the Virgo and Gemini parts of your chart will be affected. Slowdowns. If you're an Aquarius rising or a Leo rising, income might be affected. Slowdowns. Things may happen more slowly than you would like. But when Mercury starts to go direct and gather some speed, it will get corrected. The only thing I feel like I'm not spending a lot of time on today is the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. Right now, we are still in the Mercury cycle in Leo. Something related to the Leo part of our charts is still being built, developed. Transactions, communications. Fine. I will do a video on the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius as we get close to it, and we'll talk about the dates and what that means then. December 5th to February the 9th. December 5th to December 15th will be phase 1. December 15th to February the 9th, phase 2. February 9th to March 15th, phase 3. March 15th, Mercury goes retrograde, so March 15th to March 24th, phase 4. And March 24th, Mercury conjuncts the Sun and the Aries communication cycle begins. This last bit that I said is only going to be relevant for those of you who know how a Mercury cycle works. If you don't, and you're like, what are you talking, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, please just put a pin on it. I will come back to it in a separate video. I don't want to go into it here. It'll get too long. And my videos, I appreciate for the people who appreciate my hour-long videos, but I'm really trying to become a little bit more concise. And I think that this is just about everything that I want to tell you. Mercury does enter his shadow degrees tomorrow. So I said, as far as that is concerned, you can start to pay attention to the reason why I spend so much time giving you context about what is going on in the Sagittarius part of the chart. And when Venus has been here. For me, Mercury entering Sagittarius, I know exactly what communication started. You might not. Everything is not always neat and tidy with every retrograde. Oh my God, this lighting is so bizarre. And so the question becomes, as I enter the shadow degrees tomorrow and communications continues, and the communication is built on a certain bridge building. But I also know that the communication needs to deepen. And so after tomorrow, as Mercury enters the shadow degrees, the only thing that you may need to start doing is start tracking how things develop cognitively and communication-wise from a Mercury perspective so that they continue to be a topic that is getting refined, redefined, reconsidered, rethought, relooked at all the way to January 2nd. There are 4 spaces left in my $100, am I right? Yes, I am. 4 spaces left in my Diwali special, where I am offering my regular 60 to 75 minute readings for $100, which is a significant discount for people living in Canada, the EU, and the US. So if you want to avail of that, please go ahead and email me in the email below. I'm going to pin the comment pin the video I did on that. It's a 3-minute video on what that special is in the comment section, so you can look at that as well. So you can use that to contact me. Use my email address in the description box below to contact me if you just want regular readings. You don't have to be living in the discount really applies most of all to those people living in the States, in the EU, and in Canada. But regular readings and 30-minute readings are available. So whatever it is that you want to know, you can just ask me in that email address below. Comment, like my video if you are feel inclined to do so. Comment on it, gives a greater circulation on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Bell icon next to the subscribe button, hover over it. On top, wiggly bell, click on it. You'll be notified when I do new videos. Thanks button underneath this video. You can contribute to the channel that way. And I think that's about it for now. That's about it for now. I know that I feel like I should address something related to the election, but I'm going to hold back. I did a couple of videos related to the election a little while back, and I'll still stand by those. But I might do a little something in the next couple of days. For now, this is the information I need to get to you. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I will be in touch soon. Take care.